Hey everyone, welcome to another Sounds Profitable Product Deep Dive. I'm really excited for this deep dive because we have two amazing companies here, Frequency and Hindenburg, who are going to walk us through some really interesting things that they focus on collaboration. So we have Rob from Frequency, Jonathan from Hindenburg. Their two tools are really focused on improvements to the operational workflow on the Frequency side for advertising and efficiency there. And Hindenburg is one of the greatest, in my opinion, editing software is accessible to people of all levels and has really been innovative on tools for audio engineers of all levels. So Rob and Jonathan, welcome to the deep dive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So the process here is about creating the plan and a campaign in Frequency, kicking it out into Hindenburg and showing how these two amazing tools work well together. So we're going to start with Rob, who's going to walk us through the Frequency side and explain a little bit about what we're doing. We've done another product deep dive, or a few of them now, with the Frequency team, and I highly recommend you check them out to go into a little bit more detail, because we're going to be laser focused on the efficiencies here on creating actual ad content as an output and input with the Frequency tool. So Rob, over to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Brian. So what we're here to talk about today is our Mixer tool. The Mixer tool facilitates the creation of context-specific ads. Rather than an entire audience hearing a single ad, we can create a system that takes a 30-second spot and carves it up into snippets, like listener location, weather, temperature, a call to action. And the Mixer does all the work behind the scenes to create all the possible combinations of that ad, and then places that behind a VAS tag that can play to any listener specific to the content that's been selected. So we call these snippets segments, and the Mixer allows us to easily create these segments and then stitch them together. Once we have that stitched together, where we're working with Hindenburg is to take the details of all of those files. You got to figure that if we just did 3 signals with 3 elements per signal, that's 27 different combinations of that ad that could be presented to any user at any time, any listener. So what we do is we take that information, and it's already exported into a spreadsheet, and provide that to Hindenburg. Hindenburg acts as the voiceover talent. They read the scripts, they record all of the information, and provide the files back to us to import and then publish the ad.
That's really cool. So what we're talking about here is dynamic creative optimization. So a VAS tag is a type of creative format. In podcasting right now, I think we're a little bit short-sighted on how we tend to talk about VAS. VAS usually defaults to being associated with programmatic because it's the easiest way for a hosting platform or the publisher directly to call for another ad. But the main use, the original use of VAS was to call for a creative asset that had all of the different pieces loaded into it, the tracking, all of the data, all the actionability to determine in real time what to respond with. So what we're talking about here is that the signals that are passed from a hosting platform, and every major enterprise hosting platform can in one way or another use VAS tags today, can be passed through in that tag to determine the unique combination here, kind of like Mad Libs. We're talking about taking one creative and having different versions or pieces that change depending on perhaps the category, the geographical location, so many other signals that we get derived from IP address, user agent, and the episode itself. What the combination here is that in these tools, right, we can figure out all the different ways that we need to read that script or all the different parts that are replaced. The team at Frequency and the team at Hindenburg have figured out a partnership here to make it seamless, to make that script accessible, exportable from Frequency so that someone can record it in Hindenburg and import the results back into Frequency. This is really exciting because these ideas sound great and then they break down on the operational process. And I'm really happy that Frequency, a company so focused on operational flow and efficiency, has worked this out basically. So Rob, let's go through it. Let's build one of those ads.
Sure. So basically, the Mixer tool is in its beta. We have it in use for customers right now who are running active campaigns on it. So we've got a little ways to go. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right into the system and create a new campaign. The first thing I'm going to do is pick an advertiser. We'll just do 23andMe. We'll give it a campaign name, Who Am I? And save that off. The next thing we want to do is actually go ahead and create an ad unit. So we're going to create a new ad. We're going to give this the ad. We're going to do this in Australia just for the fun of it. And we're going to give it a start date and an end date. and create the ad. I've now got an ad unit created with a start date and an end date and a description. I'm going to go into my creative manager where I'm actually going to begin selecting what signals I want to use and setting up the ad. So we're going to call this a 20-second ad. And I'm going to go into my advanced settings and enable audio mixing. That's our mixer product. Let's rename this to 523M. Now, the prefix here is a customer identifiable prefix that will be in front of every file name. So as you send this off to your VO talent to actually have it voiced, you have a reference that you can go back to that's also got the placeholder, the file name that you've put in place, the prefix, as well as the date that the file was created. We'll see that in just a second. So now what I'm going to do is create my data signals. In this case, I'm going to just do 3 signals. Let's do some weather conditions: foggy, clear, and cloudy. Let's just do some temperatures too. We'll call this cold, and cold will be anything less than, let's say, 65 degrees. We'll do a warm, and we'll call warm between 65 degrees and, let's say, 78 degrees. And we'll create another one called hot. That'll be greater than 78 degrees. The last thing I'm going to do for this one is let's go ahead and do some basic locations. So I'm going to go down to my states and regions. Let's put Australia out here. And we'll select New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria. Submit that. And what I've got now is I've got all my signals defined. I'm going to go into the mixer and actually start creating those segments. And the segments, as I said earlier, are the snippets of the actual ad. Now remember, we've got a 20-second ad here. So I'm going to add a segment.
Well, real quick on that, the signals, all the ones that we decided to pick are based off of IP address. The listener, when the request comes in, the IP address identifies or can identify geography, right? It can get definitely granular down to a state or region. It's depending on the type of signal, it can get even more granular. But this is really cool because all those things, the weather, the location, that's just off of IP. User agent gets further things like the device, the app, the operating system, even more preferences on there. And episode can be custom things. And if I'm not mistaken here, because VAST is so fluid, I can pass custom parameters. And I assume that in either now or in the future, you'll be able to action off those too with your own data sets.
Correct. And you're 100% right about the user agent side of things. That's where you determine what type of device it is. Is it a tablet? Is it a mobile? Is it a desktop? And we have additional information that we can focus on off of the user agent too. The IP address does provide basic location information. And with that location information, you're able to bounce it against other data sets and grab things like weather, traffic conditions, that type of thing. We have about 35 signals that are already in the system ready to go right this second.
That's awesome.
So for creating the segment, let's say that the first one we're going to care about is location. If I can spell. So when creating this signal, the first thing that we're going to put in here is location. And we're going to start this location at an absolute beginning of the ad. So if you think of the ad as you're stitching this out as a timeline, you have the ability to specify a start point, or you have the ability to make that start point relative to a previous segment. Since this is the first segment, we're going to start at absolute 0 and select the data signal that I want to use. States and regions.
And these are based off the ones that I selected before. So that dropdown only had the specific ones that you set.
Correct. So now I've added a new segment called location. It starts at 0 seconds absolute time. And I'm going to add another segment, and we'll call this one weather. And the weather is going to be relative to the start, or the end actually, of the prior segment. So I'm going to select my weather conditions as the signals I'm going to use for this one. And the next one we'll do is the temperature. Again, relative to the end of the prior segment. and we'll put our weather condition, our temperature out there.
And the relative part is identified by like the ID number because it said 1, 2, or 3. Like, let's say I selected the wrong one. I assume I could edit it and change it from like I meant to switch weather and temperature. I could just hit edit, or do I have to delete them and redo it?
Absolutely. You can go back and just drag and drop them.
Awesome.
So, and then the last thing we'll put, so we can see now we've got location, we've got weather, and we've got temperature. We're going to put in just a call to action. So we'll call it CTA. We'll make this relative again. And I select the signal for this, but I'm going to default it. So it'll play for every version of the ad that we create. So now we've got our 4 segments created. What I'm going to do now is one of the advanced steps that we have in place that help us identify and create the file names. We're going to create audio placeholders for each permutation or combination of each of these signals. So if I go into add audio and add a placeholder, if I create all combinations, we can see that I've created a file name for New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria. We're going to do that for all of our segments.
And we see the prefix in the name that you entered there. The 523M is at the beginning of each one of those.
Correct. And what you're seeing is a date after that. We do allow the customer to customize the date format that they want to use. This is version 1 of segment 01, and then permutation or combination 1, 2, and 3.
Very important, because as I can see, that date is not what I would send to someone in Australia voicing.
There you go. So we've got that, and our placeholders for, and we've now got our 3 placeholders for our weather. We're going to do the same thing for our temperatures, and we'll create our call to action. Now, when we do this for our call to action, we're just going to set this as a default so that it plays for every combination that we're putting in place. And actually, there's only going to be 1 that we need for this. I don't need 3 different versions.
Because it's set for default. Yeah. The thing that I really want to highlight to everybody here is that the team in Frequency is really focused on innovating and getting things out as soon as possible. The things that I'm seeing here, right, like the default and still selecting the state and region, or not being able to select all of these or just create all at once, they're looking to get these things out as fast as possible into market, test them with beta clients, and then hear feedback on them. And they look at analytics very closely. So I'm honestly really excited to see even next quarter how this innovates, because those steps, knowing that I'm going to export it out to Hindenburg, it seems easy that I would just want to say like build everything with intent.
Correct. And we're working with our customers right now to understand that, because they are running active campaigns and using this. Now, it's like I said, this campaign that I'm creating right now is only going to have 27 combinations in place, but we've run campaigns that have over 3,000 combinations that can be referred to. If you had a music bed that you wanted to play, you can add audio for your music bed. If you had sound effects, you can actually add sound effects and have those sound effects show up as well.
Do you have a library, access to a library of content there? Or is that still self-provided right now?
We have an asset library that you can drag your assets into and work from there, but I don't provide default sounds or that type of thing.
Totally understand.
We've now got everything defined. So at this point is where I would hand off my spreadsheet to the creative folks. The creative folks would then put in a script, and they would send it off to the voiceover talent to actually have that voiced. And this is where Jonathan from Hindenburg comes into play, because we feel that this is a good part of our workflow that makes this easy to use. Jonathan, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Happy to represent the creative folks out there. So I am Jonathan from Hindenburg, and are you guys seeing my screen right now?
We sure are.
Okay, so here we're looking at, an Excel sheet. This would be what Rob has exported. And I'm going to talk all about Hindenburg Narrator, which is the product that that you'd use to make this into pieces of audio that will go into Frequency. But so the whole idea is that here you have this text, and in Narrator, what you do is you open up text and you sync it there. Okay. But this is what Rob would have exported out. And our job is to get this to be recorded as quickly as possible. Now, I may come back to this screen because, as you can see over here on the left side of this, it has these technical file names. And this is what you're going to have to give back. So if you were recording this in another DAW, you'd have to record each one of these files that you have in the middle. This is the actual text you'd be reading, but you have to name it this stuff here that's in column A. And the reason that's tricky is that this is just something we're doing for an example, and there are 10 of these. You might have this where it's 100 or more. So let's talk about Narrator and what it does. This is what it looks like with nothing in there. It's a blank session. Okay, and so the top part here is a DAW, which just means a recording program. But this is a little different because this recording program is all about syncing text and audio. It was originally developed for making audiobooks, and the whole idea is you open up an audiobook, the text file of it, it populates here in the manuscript, and as you're reading, it syncs all your text and your audio, and you see the contents of your book. Then you would export it out, and if let's say it was 10 chapters, and they were all named, chapter 1, chapter 2, it would export out each of the chapters individually. So that's our clever way of kind of workflow optimization for audiobooks. And that's the whole approach of Hindenburg in general is workflow optimization and making life easier for people so you can focus on being a voice talent.
Now, is Narrator the core product of Hindenburg, or is it are there multiple different apps?
Hindenburg has two products. I don't know which one is the core, but Pro is the other product, and that is specific to podcasting, and much of the functionality is all tailored to that. And so this, for instance, for making audiobooks, you can export for ACX, which is the hosting site for Audible, and it meets all the specs for it. So the idea is to automate it for exactly what you're trying to do. So Pro, which is for the podcasting side, just has a lot of features that are specific to that. And then Narrator is specific to, at first, audiobooks. But then we realized a little over a year ago, I guess now, that if we could tweak the technology and how it works, that people who are voiceover talent typically have things that look like, this. But this often comes up in e-learning, video game scripts, things like this. And the tedious part is, again, all of this file naming. Yeah. So we just figured if we could reconfigure the tech to open up these kind of documents, because it exports it out. Remember, if it was a 10-chapter book, it would all be named for you and all of that, that each one of these is kind of named automatically. So it's the whole idea is time to market. How can you get it out the door as fast as possible and as easy as possible?
Yeah. Well, but you're also dealing with so many people. When you explain that you have to name it that way, I have nightmare flashbacks of being in ad ops, right? I've definitely received 3,000 line items with impression and click pixels and had to copy and paste those over. And copy and paste, Command C, Command V, not the strongest piece of a computer. Very easy for a human error, very easy for it to have the other one. And when the text is that small, the differences there are so subtle. It's just a number, right? It's which segment and which iteration of that segment. If you're doing it quickly, if you're going through 100 of these or however many you're choosing to do, it's very easy to name it the wrong way. And if it doesn't overwrite it, if it doesn't ask you that it's the wrong name, which is lucky here when you're naming files, the conflict pops through. But if you're kicking it back into an Excel spreadsheet or you're pasting it into a platform, there's ways that it doesn't know that there's a conflict. When you're creating that asset in that way and you're passing it back to somebody who's uploading it, that person's not listening to all of them. Their job isn't to re-listen and confirm that the text matched the audio. You're the professional who recorded it. The assumption is you check that on the way out. Let's be real. Not everybody checks those things.
Right.
So this type of process makes it easy for the voice talent to make sure they're recording the right thing. It's saved in the right file. It's exported in the right way to re-ingest back into the platform. Now, one of the things I think we just clipped over real quick, and I just want to ask Rob here, how did the script get into that file? I saw how we created the permutations and everything in Frequency, but can you speak a little bit to that end?
So typically what would happen is we would send this off to the creative department. The creative department would figure out how they want to have all of the different scripts in there for each individual element. So what I did is I just cut and pasted them.
Gotcha. So the export has the column B is for where the script would go, and the creative department is the one who's populating that.
Correct.
Gotcha. Because ultimately on the Frequency side, that script isn't necessarily part of it. But I assume as this integration grows and as people use this, that might be something that's a little bit more built in for the export and import for the double check. But this is really neat here to know that this creates the space for the creative department to appropriately list it all out and assign it by all of the variables.
And Brian, as we create the segments right now, the ability is there to actually type in the script as you're going. We just usually find it's separate departments. One is ad ops setting it up. The other one would be the creative group. during the creative work.
That's awesome. And that's why I'm excited about you guys both focusing on operations for your industry, right? Like that's really powerful to remember that the people that handle part A don't necessarily handle part B or even C. So making it possible for one person to handle everything, export it, import it, do the whole thing themselves is great. But realizing that there might be different teams and might be different workflows and not everybody needs to log into everything, that's a really smart way to do it. So, Jonathan, back to you on this. When we get over into the editor, the narrator part of this, and you ingest it in here, you said that like for the audiobook and for this part here, it matches up the manuscript part of it with what I'm recording. Are you saying it's like a read along aspect? Like as I'm recording it, it's identifying what word I'm saying and it's time stamping it in there, or is it just for me to read and follow along as I'm recording?
It is the second option, but I think this is a show, don't tell situation. So I'm just going to open up that file in here and just show you what it looks like and record it. So when I say open, I mean, you go to this open like you would, a new session or something, except I'm going to pick the document that was given. Okay, so that's this Excel sheet. So when I open it up, this is what happens. When we have here on the bottom, this is the manuscript here with the text that you're going to read. Okay, and underneath it is actually the part of column C. Now, the reason for this is sometimes there'd be direction in here or something like that. Okay, but in this case, these all say weather signal, location signal, etc. Now, underneath here and the contents page, it looks like it's the exact same thing that is here, and that is true. And you don't really need to know this, but underneath that is the actual technical file name. So as I record this, when I export it out, all of that naming will be done automatically. And I'm going to show you how that works, okay? So I've armed this track now, and when you do this, you actually can do all the recording with one button. Now, I'm just, for the purposes of showing it, I'm going to use these keys that are up here. It's a previous and next. And basically, every time I click next, it's going to go to the next part of this section, or the next part in the manuscript, and there'll be this little yellow thing that's put in there, which is called a navigation point. And that's what syncs up your text and the audio. And then I'll show you, we also made some very quick editing keys. So if you wanted to cut out a bad take, which I'll do one even if I'm not purposefully going to do it because I'm not a great voiceover talent. So I'm sure there'll be a bad take in there one way or the other. And I'll just cut it out with one button, which you can see. Okay. So here is the idea. I click this. We know that right now we're in New South Wales. We know that right now we're in Queensland. We know that right now we're in Victoria. And we know that it's foggy outside. And we know that it's clear outside. And we know that it's clear outside. And we know that it's cloudy outside. And that it's a bit cold today. And that it's a bit warm today. And then it's absolutely hot today. But what do we really know about ourselves? Let's find out with 23andMe. Sign up now for your free evaluation. And hold for applause, for that beautiful performance here. Hindenburg also has a feature where it auto levels. And this is, you have to, meaning it matches your level as you go. Any features that are like that are with automation, you could turn on or off. That's up to you. Very easy to, and it is a DAW. So if you want to give the raw audio, you'll just export like I'm going to show you in a second. But if you wanted to apply any EQ, effects, other things to make it sound nice, your stuff, you have access to all of that because it is, ultimately a recording program. Okay.
Now, in the Pro Tool, if I am an engineer or whatnot, I've likely have specific settings and filters that I've set out, and for the standard editing that I'm doing. Can those settings be imported in and applied, like the templates be applied to different voices in here, or are they completely standalone?
They'd be standalone plugins, but you could, once you're in here, if you had templates or the things that you wanted to do within, a plugin, you could do that. And of course, we provide some plugins and even this very easy thing that I love, which is a voice profiler, which just makes a customized EQ. So you can have your kind of customized EQ and be there consistent every time. Again, if you're just focusing on consistency, whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And I could talk for this whole time about all the various editing, but I think we're here again. Time to market. Like how can I record this fast and get it out the door? So in this example, I gave 2 takes, and we know that it's clear outside, and we know that it's clear outside. Okay, so let's say I wanted to keep the second one. There are some very clever one key edit commands that wherever I put this playhead, the white line, if I don't want to keep this take here, I just cut it away with one click, and it just keeps everything. And if I wanted to do any edits to be right exactly on this, I can do that. So, I mean, there are just many, many ways to make this easy. So that was the whole approach with everything here with Narrator. So when I'm ready to export this out, again, okay, I've got this audio. Let's say it sounds good. You do whatever you want to do, cleaning it up or not. And there are a million ways that you can fix mistakes in the middle very easily. You can like just punch in this selection that I did here, and it will push everything off to the side. Many, many clever things. But when I'm ready to export it out, I'll say export the contents, which is this part over here on the left. And I'm going to just show you that we'll go to this frequency files, and there's nothing in here. There was nothing in that folder. It was blank. And I exported it out. It did that. And then if I go over here in this folder for frequency files, come on. Here are all the files that they are named correctly.
We know that right now we're in New South Wales.
And there it is. So all that is done for you automatically in Narrator. And that's why we think it's the perfect partnership, because it just saves time and optimizes the workflow process. And you can just upload that or export that into a folder and give it to Frequency.
And I love that too, because like this tool, exactly what you said, you can get really granular in it. You can build your templates and the engineering work on it. You can edit full podcasts in there. The Pro tool and all these are really robust tools here, but the ability to just download and set it up. Now, I know that these aren't free tools, right? They are paid products, but this partnership here opens up a world where someone's going to be new to Hindenburg. They might be a Frequency customer. They might not be a Hindenburg customer. How do they get access to it? So
on the website, you can go to Hindenburg.com and select Narrator and do a 30-day free trial. And of course, as things progress with Frequency, we'll have all types of promotions and all of that. Of course.
That's fantastic. Yeah. This is really awesome on this end. Again, like you said, that you just recorded every aspect of this ad. You can edit it in there. You can provide that files over for someone to edit in a different DAW or whatever they're doing over there, or time to market. Like you said, this is ready to go. Yeah. You kick it back over. And I believe now we're going to go back over to Rob, who has the files, was sent over the files, and we're going to see what happens when we upload it.
Okay.
Correct. Jonathan has sent the files back over to me, and here we are back in the mixer again. Now, if you remember all the segments that we created, the location, the weather, the temperature, and the call to action have the specific file names already defined, but we have an indicator here saying this was just a placeholder for the actual creative. Now what we're going to do is move that creative that Jonathan has created into the mixer. So if I just pick any segment, doesn't matter which one, and I say to add audio, I'm going to go over to upload files and drag my assets into this. You'll see them coming in. And here are all the assets being dragged in. So 10 placeholders have now been updated. If we go look in the actual screen, we can see that each icon has changed to now a playable icon. The other thing that we can do is we can preview any combination of these signals. So we can select a clear day for cold, and we want to talk about Victoria, and we have the ability to preview that as well.
We know that right now we're in Victoria, and we know that it's clear outside, and that it's a bit cold today.
Boy, that guy sounds smart, that voiceover.
Yeah, that's a good voiceover. So the other side of this now is we move into the configuration tab, and that's where all of the possible combinations are created. So if I click out of my preview and go into my configuration, we can see that the system has created every possible combination of all of those different snippets or segments that we put together. So we have cloudy, warm Victoria. We have foggy, cold Victoria, Queensland. And for any of those, you have the ability to preview the file in its entirety. So once we've got all our files in place, what we can also do is we can add companion banners, scripts, or pixels. We can do it in bulk. just select everything and assign resources. If I wanted to put a banner for every single one of these, I can just go out to my resources again and drag in a banner.
I love the idea. I love the ability to track each one of these individually. I mean, that's overwhelming to do it manually, but the fact that you can set it up this way or set up likely a parameter into it, like that adds a lot of depth to this, right? You can see which ones are actually triggering. You can see if the geo-targeting matches what the hosting platform is sending. You can see which ones convert. Like, really interesting here. Are people, more interested in learning about their history, their ancestry when it's cloudy out versus foggy or versus hot or cold? Like, they're definitely micromanaging different things here, but like, it's insights that we can do more with. And that banner aspect, do they click to it, works great because VAST is more than just audio and Frequency is more than just podcasting. It's all audio, it's all VAST, anything that can take VAST. And there are a handful of both podcast solutions and streaming solutions that can handle a banner too. So very awesome to see that robust combination there.
Correct. And then the last thing we're going to do is actually drag in a default version of the entire file. And the reason we do this is, remember, this is a 20-second ad. Well, what if you're listening and you don't meet any of the signals that we have defined? You're just in a different location. Then the default file will be played.
I think that's really smart. The fallback is really important because the goal is for that VAST tag to always return something. And if it doesn't match, it's not going to return anything. So you want to understand that. You want to make sure you reach all of the audience. And you can even find out that maybe your targeting was too specific. Maybe who you're trying to reach is a little bit broader. Maybe the people on the default ad just resonate with it a little bit better. And there's something about that flow that actor took. So I appreciate that option there.
So at this point, what I do is I'd simply hit my publish button. The VAST tag is generated, and you literally just take that VAST tag, and with whichever partner you're working with, you make it available to them, and the ad runs.
That's awesome. This is so exciting because I know that you guys have just met a handful of weeks ago, and I'm really pumped by the collaboration here. Like, I think that this is a level of innovation, a level of operation that we don't see. I mean, the ad tech side and the technical process side, the production side and the engineering side, we tend to think about things like the salespeople selling a campaign and the host reading, and we forget about everybody in the middle. And both sides, the technical and the operations on the sales and configuration, and the depth that is producing audio content, there are a lot more people involved. Removing those steps, this means that I, as an ad ops person, can go configure all of this based on an IO and pass it to the right people on my side so that they can enter the right information and get it to the engineering, the production, the audio side of it. And on the audio side, I mean, maybe because I'm not as close to that, I felt like if I was just the voice talent, I have everything I need to move forward, and it makes it even easier for someone to quickly review it on a management level instead of there being maybe 2 or 3 people directly involved in that process.
And as you said before, it cuts out a step of potential human error with just copying, pasting, or typing, whatever. Yeah.
And guys, this was 27 combinations. Imagine when you're working with 3,000 combinations.
This is great. So, Frequency and Hindenburg are partnering with this. This is available in beta. The Frequency tools, you need to sign up with them. And Rob and team are awesome at giving direct demos. Everything that we do here is supposed to be overview of how everything works as like a default template, right? For you to get an understanding of how it could work for you. But I really recommend that you take the time to have a direct walkthrough, a direct deep dive of your own with the team at Frequency. And Jonathan and team at Hindenburg are always available to talk to you through why their DAW is the right solution for you. And I honestly believe that trial is going to help you figure that out. So this is a killer combination today that starts a process that I think is going to expand. Seeing structure and operational focus around these things, seeing frameworks that are more than just how we count a download, but how we process and create ads and content on both the technical and the engineering side. This is a really exciting first step. So thank you both for walking us through this today.
It was a pleasure, Brian.
Thank you very much.
This is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I agree. So we'll have more at the end of this. You can find out more about Frequency and Hindenburg and how you can work with each of them. And thank you for joining us on this product deep dive.
you.